just because there's a flower on it doesn't mean that necessarily it's going to be good for dyes, is what I've learned. So things that look like they might be cool for dyes, or you can make dyes, don't necessarily work for eco-printing. So with eco-printing, there's a lot of trial and error. Ones that are on the ground like this is, you won't get any dye from this because this has already like kind of reached that point of decaying, right? Even though this is the same plant, you're looking for the chloroplast that is in the plant itself.
Hi, my name is Emilie Kvist, and I am one of 8 BC Culture Days ambassadors for the year of 2022. So I'm a printmaker by trade. That is my artistic practice of choice. But as a printmaker, I'm interested in how the process of print media can be expanded beyond the edition to include sculpture, installation, and community-based projects. I've kind of had this idea of eco-printing and exploring in my sketchbook for a while. During the pandemic, researching the Eastside Culture Crawl and some of the online workshops that they had there, and there was somebody who was doing eco-printing, and I just thought, wow, this is really, really cool. How you can take eco-printing and use nature to actually make prints. And as a printmaker, that is super cool to me. And so I kind of just mind banked that and put that in the sketchbook and did a little bit with it and was like, cool, we're going to utilize this at some point.
Printmakers would go out into nature and they would study the plant life around them, and they'd make botanical sketches, and those would then be turned into etching plates, and that's what you would see when you reference those old photos of plants. Those are all made by printmakers. There's an interesting connection to like botany and printmaking, but with eco-printing it's like a very new contemporary way of doing things where I'm not actually sure what I'm going to get when I eco-print something. It's just like this organic process which comes through trial and error. Yeah, and I'm just kind of like bundling up the plants and letting the plants do their own thing. And if I get something from it, I do, and if I don't, then that's okay too.
So back in July, I was running artistic hiking workshops with the community of Abbotsford and Mission. I had ages 12 and up on the Abbotsford hike and ages 6 and up, and these hikes included anything from listening activities where we went out and we listened to what was around us, to a scavenger hunt that we did where we tried to just identify different things and plant materials around us. Printmaking, where we took plant materials, added ink, and printed them with paper, and then one of it was a collaborative eco-printing project that we did together on the hike itself. During the pandemic, it was really difficult for printmakers to enter into studio spaces. Those spaces were off limits due to the amount of people that were in the spaces generally all the time. And that is like extremely difficult for somebody who needs, one, the community to make, with the help of making work and feedback, but also printing presses and having your studio space and having your studio space, I don't want to say like taken away, but limited, and like your access has been limited, was really hard for me. I tried making other work during the pandemic and it just didn't really feel like me. But yeah, to cope with this, I got out into nature and I really took to the hiking trails as kind of like a meditative process to bring back my creative endeavors in my own studio practice. So I got out into the hiking trails and became just interested with like the smallest mushrooms and how the rain tasted and smelt differently and all the things that were around you, and that really helped my creative process. And so I thought it would be interesting to run workshops on the hikes themselves and actually take the print studio out in our backpack onto the trails and do that with communities in Abbotsford and Mission.
We can see that it has roughly 7 to 9 classification, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lobes that are razor edged on the top. And vine maples are really cool because, unlike other maples which grow right up, they will actually grow upwards and then slant over and reroot into the ground. So as we're going to be going along this hike, if you see something that is interesting, you can take a couple of them respectfully, not from all the same plant, but just respectfully as we go along, because we're going to try to wrap an eco-printed bundle at the end of this and unravel one together.
From this hike, my key takeaways are that there are stuff around us when you walk into a trail that you don't notice until you slow down and look around, feel, touch, maybe sometimes even taste what's around you. So, for example, the stuff we did with the leaf printing, we don't actually do that during the hike. So this is the first time I did it, and I thought it was really interesting how you can just have some simple tools, then you can make yourself some really interesting and cool leaves on paper.
We're doing printing in nature, guys. Like, we're doing print on the trail. This is the wild thing about this. Generally, print is always done like in a studio space with presses, but we're gonna do it here in situ, in the forest, from the environment, that plants that we have found. So, piece of wood, which is just like a flatter surface, our paper, and you're gonna keep this because anything that we're gonna put dye on afterwards is gonna go back into this contained, and I'm gonna decompose of it properly in a safe way. We have our ink pad and our little piece of board, and what we're gonna do first, we're gonna put down a piece just to protect that board. We're gonna open up our ink pad, and we're gonna put our plant down. We're just gonna apply ink to the back of the surface. Flip your leaf. That's like the most basic version of print that I can bring on a hike. How has nature helped you in recovery from the pandemic?
I'm gonna be honest, I was one of those people who wasted the pandemic. I sat indoors. I was on Netflix like 90% of my time. And then right as it was like wrapping up, I was like, oh my god, I can go outside. Everyone else is outside. Why didn't I do it? So kind of a kick in the pants actually to go outside because everybody else was doing it. I think lots of people went on hikes and things like that in the pandemic. And I literally saw people getting healthier. And I was like, why am I not doing that? So I think it's more that it's started to help me now. Like, I do feel that I'm getting out more and I'm meeting more people, ironically, because of the pandemic. So, yeah. Like, this experience, I don't think I would have signed up for this before the pandemic because I'd just be lazy. But, you know, you got me out here and I'm, like, really grateful for it. So, thank you.
Actually did a collaborative eco-printing project where together as a community we found plant material either on the ground or had been like line trimmed recently and collected those up and were able to lie them onto fabric and bundle and steam them.
We're literally taking the studio out of my backpack at this moment, and we're gonna be prepping some material. I have some pre-prep material, and we're gonna wrap it up into a bundle, and I'll be taking it home to steam. And this is an eco-printing process. So we're going to be extracting the tannins from the plants that we've collected today and using this for our eco-printed material. And these are some examples of oak leaves that have been eco-printed through this process. So when we've bundled this whole thing up, it's going to look like this. This is what it looks like after it's been steamed. And then today we'll also be unraveling this one.
Look at this.
Oh my gosh.
Cool.
That's great.
So this is what's going to be displayed, right? Like these.
This is what I'm going to use. This is what I'm using for install. This is all the plant material, so I can lay this down. The oak ones are really good too. some of them have already printed on one side, so I'm gonna get the one.
So yeah, standing behind me we have 28 eco-printed panels, and each panel has 3 to 4 bamboo stakes in it that actually help hold the panel up. And all of the panels are done on cotton, and they're all cotton recycled sheets. So that is another thing too, because you're thrifting and recycling materials instead of producing or buying more new materials, or actually taking something that hasn't had a purpose anymore, hasn't had a purpose in a while, and giving it a new life. So Labyrinth is kind of hints back to that hiking workshop in itself, where we as a community were walking through spaces and taking time to do listening activities, printmaking with items that we had found on the ground, using ink pads that were in our backpacks, scavenger hunts where we tried to identify leaves and different plant material, and then our collaborative eco-printing project, which I then took the textiles back to build these panels that we see here. So being able to put it on the Labyrinth means that it is open to all members of the public. You know, unlike a gallery, parks are some of the only spaces that are completely free to the public to use without having to pay admission. They're for everybody. Being able to have the work back in the Labyrinth in a space that is accessible to everyone without having to pay some sort of fee, I think is really important to projects that are community-based, especially when the workshops themselves are already free access for everybody, and worked really hard to make sure that they are accessible either by bus as well. I think as an emerging artist, I think what has really surprised me the most is usually I'm used to, like, community is a big thing of printmaking, but this project, like, had so many people involved. Like, none of the work that I made, nothing that I did was not possible without, you know, the help of the City of Abbotsford, City of Mission, the participants on the hikes themselves. Like, it really takes a community to do something like this in a short window of time, and people who don't even come from artistic backgrounds were just interested to be a part of this project and show up in really lovely ways to just, yeah, build a community around this work. And I hope that this also shed some light on the Labyrinth. As I was cleaning the area and sweeping things up, you don't even know how many people came to talk to me about how they're excited to see the space activated again, even just for a short window of time. I think it's really cool to just be able to give art and share process with people who don't necessarily come from artistic backgrounds, you know?
With this kind of installation, you need help from other people. You can't just, like, you could do it on your own, but it would take like twice as long.
Yeah.
And also factoring in the weather too.
Yeah.
So like having the community involved and making them feel as part of the process also brings awareness to art as well, because it makes them feel like, oh, I helped with that art project, so now I'm involved with that art.
There is no way I physically could do any of this work without the help of the community. And I think that is something, like, even during the pandemic, which helped to inspire this project, that I was missing, and I think so many people were missing. And getting out into nature was great to cope with that method, but I think being able to put on something that is a project that's for the community, done by the community, in partnership, in collaboration with the community, I think is so important to this work. Yeah.